recitation of Quran with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى ويقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم. We will now have a recitation of poetry by Ali Abbas uncle. Please welcome him up with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على.
We will recite a nasheed in honor of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. Inshallah, the fadail of Amir al-Mu'mineen are also appropriate to recite at the occasion of the birth of any of our Imams. So inshallah, please join us in this recitation. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Mawla Ali Jan, Maula Ali Jan. Ali, you are the one no one could assail.
The selfless warrior, history shall hail.
The one for who the Lord sent the Dhul-Fiqar.
The one who Mustafa titled Al-Qarar.
The one who Mustafa titled Al-Qarar. Mawla Ali Jan, Mawla Ali Jan. Amir al-Mu'minin, Ya Shahe Mardan, Ya Shahe Mardan, Ya Shahe Mardan. For Haqq and Batil, you are the Mizan, you are the Mizan. Mawla Ali Jan. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Your mother Fatima, she named you Haidar.
And like a lion you won Khandak Khaybar.
Shab-e Hijrat, we see you as Murtada.
Ghadir khum we hai man kuntu Mawla.
غدير خم بهر من كنت مولا مولا لي جان مولا لي جان أمير المؤمنين يا شاه مردان. Join us. يا شاه مردان يا شاه مردان. For Haqq and Batil, you are the Mizan, you are the Mizan. Mawla
Ali Jan.
your patience, piety, moral excellence.
Your knowledge, empathy, peak of eloquence.
If your example all Muslims could embrace,
We would be paragons of justice and grace.
we would be paragons of justice and grace. Mawla Ali Jan, Mawla. Please join us. Amir al-Mu'minin, Ya Shahe Mardan. Everyone, Ya Shahe Mardan, Ya Shahe
Mardan.
For Haqq and Batil, you are the Mizan, you are the Mizan.
Mawla Ali Jan.
The world is still in awe from Badr Hunain.
But your true miracles are Zainab Hussain.
For 14 centuries, no
the standards that they set for standing steadfast.
The standards that they set for standing steadfast. Mawla Ali Jan, Mawla
Ali Jan.
Amir al-Mu'minin, Ya Shahe Mardan, Ya Shahe Mardan. Everyone, Ya Shahe Mardan. For haq and batil, you are the mizan. You are the mizan. Mawla Ali Jan, Mawla Ali Jan. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you, Ali Abbas uncle, for that very beautiful recitation of poetry. We will now move on to the lecture portion of tonight's program, and I would like to welcome Hujjat al-Islam Sayyid Sulaiman Hassan with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين، شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are celebrating the anniversary of the birth of our 10th Imam, the successor and heir of the message and the leadership which Allah granted to Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And the Imam who had perhaps the most important role in preparing and setting the stage for the believers to enter into the period of ghaibah and occultation, which is the period of the imamat of our own Imam, the 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi. May Allah hasten his appearance. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So although sometimes we don't talk as much about the story and the life and the history of some of our Imams, including our 10th Imam, Imam Ali Naqi, it is a very important history for us to be aware of, and a very important event for us to remember and commemorate. Briefly, inshallah, I will say a few things about the life of our Imam so we can come to know him better. And inshallah, it is our prayer that Allah keep us on the path of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali. In our love and in our loyalty, and also in our character and our goals that we have within our life. Imam Ali ibn Muhammad al-Naqi al-Hadi alayhim as-salam was our 10th Imam. His father was Imam Muhammad al-Taqi or al-Jawad, our 9th Imam. And his mother, according to most narrations, was a very noble lady originally from the western region of Africa or North Africa by the name of Samana al-Maghribiya. And some narrations have said that the name of the mother of the Imam was Sosan. Now this was something which was not uncommon in that time, especially for people who traveled from one land to another, and especially for those who may have had a history of being slaves or in some way indentured, and whose freedom depended on the relationship they had with their masters or their employers or their benefactors. Slavery was a complex institution, and we shouldn't simplify it with the common stereotypes or understanding or experience we have, for example, in American history. In many cases, through the history of Islam, there were people who were formerly enslaved, but they later on not only acquired their freedom, but they acquired a place of great power and wealth and honor in the eyes of society. And particularly in the practice of Ahlul Bayt, it was the seerah and the effort of Ahlul Bayt in a society that had a great deal of classism and inequality to seek out those people who had been enslaved. And many of them, in fact, perhaps a majority of them, had been enslaved because of battles that were in themselves unjust. If you look at the history of Islam, much of the struggle that governments have, they used the slogan of spreading Islam, but in reality, they were just trying to spread their own territory and prestige, enrich themselves, secure the stability of their throne, even if it means that they make war with other Muslims and make peace with the enemies of Islam, let alone non-Muslims. And many of these people who were enslaved, it was not through a just war in the first place, but it was the practice of Ahlul Bayt to find those people who had been enslaved, who were pious and noble and worthy of the companionship of the family of the Prophet. And they would bring them into their own household, and then they wouldn't treat them as slaves, they wouldn't even treat them as employees, but they would treat them as family members. So anybody who entered into the household of Ahlul Bayt in any capacity, many of our Imams, they had gardens, orchards, property, particularly our 6th Imam, our 7th Imam, our 8th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, Imam Musa Kadhim, Imam Ali al-Rida alayhi salam. So they had people who worked in the fields or in the orchards or in their property. They had people who were employed in trade with businesses that were funded and were owned by Ahlul Bayt. But those people who were in their employed or in their service as servants, as employees, as slaves, as I mentioned, who were brought into the household of the Prophet, it was the practice that for Ahlul Bayt, they ate the same food that Ahlul Bayt themselves ate. They wore the same clothes that Ahlul Bayt themselves wore. It wasn't that the Imams would say, well, I am the owner or I am the CEO, so my worth is higher, and this person, they are replaceable. An executive is not easily replaceable. And from an economic standpoint or from a managerial standpoint, that is true. But the Imams were not economists and they were not managers. They were that, but they were not only that. And the way they looked at people was through a divine lens, a spiritual lens. And so even Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he buys 2 garments, now Qambar did not have the same social position that Imam Ali had. He was a freed slave. And it would be very easy for Imam Ali to say that, I am a member of Quraysh. And particularly in the period after the death of the Prophet, how luxurious the lifestyle of Quraysh had become. In fact, if you look at the history in the time of the first 3 caliphs, one of the accusations that was made about Imam Ali is that you are a poor person. So how are you going to govern an expanding empire with millions of subjects and millions of dollars in income? Normally, even if you are hiring somebody for a job, you look at their experience. If we want to have construction, we're not going to hire a contractor who has never done something of a comparable scale or complexity of what we want to build. If somebody's experience is that they've remodeled a few apartments and maybe installed a few patios, we're not going to hire them to build our dream house. And some people said that, we have business empires that go from Egypt and Africa all the way to Khurasan. I'm talking about the people in the Umayyad family and even companions like Talha and Zubair. This was their opposition to Imam Ali, not the real reason for it, but the declared reason. That you are a simple person, you eat barley, dry bread, maybe a few dates, your clothing is patched, na'udhu billah. You are a laborer. And that is the people you associate with, that is the kind of food you eat, that is the kind of clothing that you wear. What is it that you know about how to manage millions of dollars or billions of dollars equivalent at that time of tax revenue and disbursements and all of those affairs? Imam Ali could have said to Qambar, I need to make sure that I'm credible in the circle of my peers. Many of us, we have experienced that if your family, cousins and people your own age, or the people that you went to college with or school with, if they are advancing in your career, in their careers, they are getting wealthier, they are getting, greater authority or equity, then sometimes we feel like we're being left behind. And there are many people, they buy a big house that they can't really easily afford, not because they need it or they want it, but this is what my peers have. This is the standard that cousins, family members, friends, others, so I need to keep up. Sometimes we do that for no reason or reasons that we regret. Sometimes we say that, I need to maintain my dignity and my honor. There are legitimate reasons why sometimes people, they do need to keep a standard as well. But Imam Ali, he bought 2 garments, and then one of them was slightly better than the other. He said to Qambar that you take this one, because it is more appropriate for a young person. I am no longer young and I have no need for good clothing. So the employee or the servant is given not only what is equal, but what is better than what Imam Ali himself was going to wear. That was the seerah and the practice of Ahlul Bayt. So we have the mother of our 10th Imam, Samana al-Maghribiyya, a very noble lady brought from captivity and freed, not only in terms of liberation from slavery, but also liberation from a worldly or a material existence by coming into the household of our 9th Imam, Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salatu wassalam, and becoming the mother of a ma'soom and an imam. And just a quick point to remind us, you all know that Imam Muhammad Taqi was also married to the daughter of the Caliph Ma'mun. This was a wedding with great fanfare because it was a scandal among Banu al-Abbas. They said that first we were afraid of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha that was made heir apparent, and after his martyrdom, Banu Abbas, the ruling family, they were a little bit pleased that their throne and their dynasty was now secure in their own hands and it wouldn't go to the family of the Prophet. But Ma'mun, in his own scheming and planning, he then married his daughter, al-Fadl, to the son of Imam Rida alayhi salam, who was our 9th Imam, Imam Muhammad Taqi. And many people, they had that fear from the Abbasid family, and perhaps some of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, they also had that hope that, well, if Imam Ali Rida alayhi salam was not allowed to live in order to inherit the kingdom and the authority of Ma'mun, then maybe the 9th Imam, Imam Muhammad Taqi, or the offspring of Imam Muhammad Taqi, because the son of Imam Muhammad Taqi would be expected to be born from al-Fadl. Maybe the family of Ahlul Bayt will once again inherit that position of authority through that relationship with the ruling family. But Allah, He has a sunnah. And that sunnah was known to Ahlul Bayt, maybe not known to some of their followers, but it was demonstrated. al-Fadl did not bear any children. And who did Allah honor with being the mother of the next Imam and guide and leader of the Muslims and humanity? Not the princess, but the one who would have been called a slave. Because it isn't your high birth or your lineage that determines your honor. It is your piety and it is your character. And we see this very vividly demonstrated just if you see the contrast that Imam Muhammad Taqi, if he had 2 spouses or 2 mates, one of them was a princess. But there wasn't barakah in her lineage because her character did not allow her to be in any way associated with the continuation of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. And then there was a former slave girl. Her name is reported in different ways, presumably because she was not a native speaker of the Arabic language. And she came from abroad, and maybe as she was brought into Medina, the name may have been changed or given to her by different people, Samana or Sosan, and yet her character and her worthiness was such that Allah brought her into proximity of the household of the Prophet, and He made her the mother of Imam Hassan Askari and the grandmother of Imam Mahdi. May Allah hasten his appearance. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So one very beautiful sunnah of Allah that we see in the life of Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salam, and also a reminder for us when we are thinking of marriage or looking for a spouse for ourselves or for someone else in our family, the criteria should be first and foremost the worthiness of that person's character, their piety. Everything else is secondary. I'm not going to say it's unimportant, but everything else is of secondary importance. Now, another sunnah that we have, as many of you know, Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salam, he was born almost exactly 200 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. In the year 212 AH. The Prophet died in the year 11, so we can say 201 years, almost 202 years after the death of our Prophet. Some narrations, the majority say that he was born in the middle of Dhul Hijjah, and then there are some narrations that he was born in the month of Rajab. But more commonly it is the middle of Dhul Hijjah, which is when we are commemorating his birth as well. And according to most narrations, he was born in a small village called Sariya, which is on the outskirts of Medina, about 3 miles from Medina back in that day. Now it would be within the city of Medina. This was a village that was established by our 7th Imam, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, as one of his properties. As I said, the Imams had orchards and land that they cultivated, and they had also established certain areas for cultivation. Sariya was a city established by Ahlul Bayt, and it also gave them a little bit of a distance from the hustle and bustle and the politics of Medina, and some protection from the surveillance of oppressive governments and unjust governments. So it was very close, but 3 miles from Medina. Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salam was born 200 years after the death of our Prophet, according to most narrations, not in Iraq, but in Sariya, in the vicinity of Medina. And it was in the year 220 when he became the Imam. So how old was our 10th Imam from 212 to 220? Just under 8 years of age. Now, you might expect that this would cause a great deal of controversy and dispute among the Shia, because to have an Imam that young, it raises questions. Is the Imam able to assume the office of Imamat immediately? Sometimes, in different governments and dynasties, you would have a king who would die when their heir or successor was very young. And usually what would happen is they would say that that young prince, for example, is the legitimate successor of the king who died, but there would be some regent or wazir or minister put in charge with experience until the young ruler came of age. That was what people knew in Rome, in Persia, in other kingdoms of that area, Abyssinia presumably, and other places. So you would expect there was controversy. But it was a blessing of Allah that the imamat of our 10th Imam did not have that controversy at its beginning. And this is the way that Allah, He teaches us important lessons in our life and in our religion, through lived experience. So when you have a hardship or a test, the first thing that should enter into your mind is, Allah must have a purpose. And I shouldn't be unhappy or object to the test, but I should say, what lesson is Allah teaching me? What wisdom or insight or strength of character am I to develop through this test? It's our tendency to immediately say, what if? And why can't it be that way? And why can't it be that way? If I am making a decision, then I am not ma'soom. And so you can ask me, but why are you doing this? Wouldn't it be better to do that? Because I can make a mistake. And even in those areas where I am an expert, maybe you will have an opinion that will be better or will be helpful to me, let alone those areas where I am not even experienced or an expert in the first place. Even where I am, I might still learn and benefit because I don't have all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom that is needed to make the perfect decision. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator and sustainer, and He has knowledge of all things. He has power over all things. So we shouldn't take that tendency, which is to question and to object, and apply it to the decree of Allah. That Allah, why couldn't you extend the life of Imam Muhammad Taqi a few more years so his son could come of age? Oh Allah, why couldn't Imam Ali Naqi have been born a little bit earlier so he would have been older and it would have been easier? My decisions, your decisions, they are open to question. But then the decisions of Allah and the decrees of Allah conveyed to the Prophet and the Imams, they are not open to question and to second guessing. They are meant to be obeyed, and if anything, you can question to understand the wisdom, but not to second guess or improve the decision. So it is okay to go to the Imam and say, I do not understand why you made this command. Can you give me some insight? But it is not okay to go to the Imam or to go to the Prophet or to go to Allah from whom they receive their instructions and to object. Whenever you have a test, if it comes from Allah, then your frame of reference should not be, why me? But it should be, oh Allah, what is it that you want me to learn from this test? Now, let us look at this imamat at the age of 8. Was Imam Ali Naqi the first Imam who came at this young age? No. His father before him, Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he also became the Imam at the age of 8 or younger. So it was twice in a row. And in both cases, very quickly, the community of the followers of Ahlul Bayt reached a consensus about who is the correct Imam for them to follow, the authentic and true Imam, and there wasn't a splinter group that formed a new sect or that divided the Shia. So why this repeated test? You might think once would have been enough to make a point. Let me just give an example so we can see the benefit and the wisdom. Let's say, for example, that you come from a wealthy family and you decide that you want to go out and earn your own livelihood. You want to prove to yourself that you are not just, resting and riding the success of your father or grandfather or family and using their wealth, but that you are making your own effort and creating your own business, your own livelihood. And let's say that you don't take advantage of a loan or a gift from them, and you do your own effort and you actually get ahead. Now, some people will say, well, even if you struck it out on your own, the education, the stability, the resources provided by your family, they had an effect on your success. That is true. But even that part which is due to your own effort, many people will not believe it. They'll say, oh, there must have been some hidden phone call, some connection, some seed capital, some benefit that was provided. I don't believe it. That you come from such a wealthy family and that you did it entirely on your own. Now let's say, for example, that there is a person who doesn't come from a wealthy family. And they had the same education. Let's just say that they got a scholarship, they went to the same school, so those circumstances, to the extent that it's possible, they are the same. You can call it a control variable. But they don't have that family name or that family wealth. And in the same space of maybe say 10 years, they build a very successful and a very profitable company. What will be different? People will be more willing to accept that this was your effort and your sacrifice because they know that you don't have that family backing or that resource, connection, or help that you can call upon. But then there still might be a question that, well, everybody gets lucky. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Maybe other people, they did the same thing and they didn't get successful. So then if you were to say, all right, I'll give away all of that wealth and I'll start again from scratch. Now it will become even more clear if you again are able to establish a successful business that it wasn't your family connections and it wasn't just luck, but it was your own skill and your own hard work and your own ingenuity that allowed you to be able to achieve that material success. This is just an example. Material success is not my point. Nor is the ability to establish a successful business a sign that you are a person of good character. That depends on what you do with the wealth and with the material success you have attained. There are many people who are very wealthy, but they are failures. And there are many people who are poor, but they are successes in life. And of course, it is great if you can be materially successful and also spiritually successful and not only do well, but do good with what you have been given. But the example is for us to understand that sometimes because you have a rich tradition or family that you are coming from, people are not able to see the true secret or factors that were important in your success. That rich person in my example and that poor person, they both did the same thing. Hard work and effort and skill and the sweat and day and night of work, that is what brought them to build their success. But people will find it more credible if you don't have a powerful family and a wealthy family compared to if you do. This is true of the Imams as well. Many times, people, they may have that feeling that, well, if I was in a very noble family, then I would be, a great scholar, a great pious person. They don't realize that when you are in that pious family, yes, you have opportunities for learning, but you also have temptations that are not found elsewhere. They assumed that, if Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was a very learned and a very inspiring figure, what else can come out of the household of Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam? If Imam Musa Kazim was such a peerless figure, then what else can come out of the household of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq? No. The reality is that that household prepares the best soil, but it is up to the piety of the individual and the tawfiq of Allah what comes out of that soil. It isn't an automatic result. And it was very important for the Muslims to know, and particularly the Shia to know, that imamat was not a political office or a scholarly office that the Imam became an apprentice. And because Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he had scholarship and he had piety, so Imam Ja'far Sadiq grew up, spent 30 years with his father, and then he inherited the company. But the reason he ran that company well is because he was an apprentice with his father. That was never the case. Even Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, even Imam Musa al-Kadhim, their imamat was a gift from Allah. It was their piety and their worthiness. And it was the tawfiq and the honor that came from Allah that made them worthy of that position. But once again, if you imagine how people see it, they say, well, of course. If your father was a successful goldsmith, you know the tricks of the trade. That's not your skill. It's just that your father set you up for success. Or any other business, it may be the same way. So in one sense, Allah reset that clock to remind people and show people that the reality of Ahlul Bayt, it is not that worldly inheritance or scholarship that is acquired or learned, or that an apprentice may take from a teacher. But rather it is an honor and it is a gift that comes from Allah. And it is because of the worthiness of that person to fulfill that leadership position for the Muslims and for all of humanity and for all of creation. And so this is why, or perhaps we can say this is one reason why, first our 9th Imam, Imam Muhammad Taqi al-Jawad, and then his son, our 10th Imam, Imam Ali al-Naqi al-Hadi, alayhimus salatu wassalam, they were, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. They were given that position of leadership in their childhood. So nobody would think that this is apprenticeship. This is just training that the previous Imam gave them. And they would be able to understand the divine role of Imamat. Because in order for you to be a follower of the Imam, you have to know what are the attributes and what is the character of the Imam whom you are following. If you think that they just know about fiqh, then you will only come to them, is gelatin halal? Is this food haram? Is this najis? If you understand that they have a much higher rank, and this is just one of the things which they teach you, the knowledge of your law, the knowledge of your doctrine, the knowledge of these superficial worldly sciences and religious sciences, then you will have a different relationship with Ahlul Bayt. So Imam Jawad and Imam Ali Naqi. And to come now to the conclusion of today's talk, there were two very important teachings from our 10th Imam. One is a ziyarah that many of you may be familiar with, a ziyarah al-jami'ah, the comprehensive ziyarah. That is narrated from our 10th Imam, Imam Ali Naqi. And it is called a ziyarah al-jami'ah for one of two reasons. Jami'ah means comprehensive. One is that it is not exclusive to any one of the Imams, but rather it addresses Ahlul Bayt as a whole, and it can be recited as one of the most beautiful and one of the most authentic ziyarat for any one of the Imams. And I would encourage all of us, if you are honored with ziyarah, you go whether to Medina or to Najaf or to Karbala or to the shrine of any of the Imams, then during your stay, at least once, whatever other ziyarat you also recite ziyarah al-jami'ah at least once, with the intention of that Imam. The other reason why it is called a ziyarah al-jami'ah is because in terms of its content, it is a comprehensive introduction to the beliefs of the Shia about Ahlul Bayt. What is their position? They are not political leaders. They are not just there to answer our questions about law or even about tafsir or doctrine or akhlaq, but they are meant to elevate humanity and to connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the teachings and the honor that comes with piety and closeness to Allah. They have the solution to our political problems. They have the solution to our emotional needs and crises. They have the solution to our societal and our social needs. They have the solution to war and to oppression and to suffering and to all of those human needs and all of the questions we have that are relevant for how we live our life and what is the purpose of our existence that brings us not only happiness or wellness in this world, but that brings us salvation in the hereafter. So az-ziyara al-jami'ah is a comprehensive ziyarah that gives you that instruction. And the other teaching that I will mention is one of the ziyarat of Amir al-Mu'mineen for the day of Ghadir. Because the day of Ghadir is coming in just a few days. There are many ziyarat for Ghadir because Ahlul Bayt, they taught us that that is the greatest celebration for the Muslims. The day when Allah appointed and the Prophet proclaimed that institution, not just the person, but the institution that is going to continue Islam and preserve and protect and fulfill the prayers of all of the prophets and all of the pious believing men and women throughout history and the goals and mission of our Prophet himself. So one of those ziyarat of Ghadir, known as az-ziyara al-Ghadiriyah, is also narrated from our 10th Imam, Imam Ali al-Naqi. And in conclusion, I want to just read for us some portion of that ziyara Ghadiriyah. Because in this way we are honoring Imam Ali Naqi who taught this ziyarah, and we are also honoring that great Eid of Ghadir, which is going to come in just a few days. So just a few lines for barakah, inshallah, and I hope that all of us will be able to recite these ziyarat of Ghadir when the day of Ghadir comes. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So after salam for our Prophet and the prophets of Allah, Imam Ali Naqi, he says, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Sayyid al-Wasiyyin wa waritha ilm al-Nabiyyin wa waliya Rabbil Alameen Mawlaya wa Mawla al-Mu'mineen wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My peace be to you, O Commander of the Faithful, O Leader of the legatees and the heirs of all of the prophets, O heir to the knowledge of the prophets, O one who is the wali and the appointed guardian by Allah, the Lord of the worlds, my Mawla and the Mawla of all mu'mineen, and Allah's peace and blessings be to you, O Imam Ali. Assalamu alayka ya Mawlaya ya Amir al-Mu'mineen ya Amin Allah fi ardih. Peace be to you, O you who are the one who is a trustee of Allah in His earth. Wa safirahu fi khalqih. You are the ambassador of Allah among His creation. وَحُجَّتَهُ الْبَالِغَ عَلَىٰ عِبَادِهِ. And you are that conclusive proof of Allah that He sent to His servants. Assalamu alayka ya deen Allahil Qaweem. Peace be to you, O you who are that upright religion of Allah. Imam Ali is not just the one who conveys the religion, he is Deenullahil Qaweem. He is that firm religion of Allah. وَصِرَاطَهُ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Imam Ali is not just the one who guides us to the right path, but he is that right path of Allah. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan naba'ul azim. You are, O Imam Ali, that great news that is proclaimed in the Quran in Surah An-Naba. الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ وَعَنْهُ يَسْأَلُونَ. And about which the people ask. So this is one portion of the Ziyara Ghadiriya of Imam Ali Naqi. I pray to Allah that He make us among those who celebrate and remember the message of the Prophet on the day of Ghadir. May Allah allow us to learn from the teachings of our 10th Imam, Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wassalam. And as he prepared the Shia for the imamate of our 12th Imam, one of his companions was Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Amri, the first ambassador of our 12th Imam. May we be the true followers and loyal servants of the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi, and may we be blessed with the fulfillment of the prayers of our Imams, the fulfillment of the prayer of Imam Ali Naqi and all of our Imams with the reappearance of Imam Mahdi in honor of Imam Ali Naqi and for the appearance of the Imam of our time, and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep all of us in His protection and in His guidance on the path of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let us conclude with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, and once again, Eid Mubarak to all of you, inshaAllah.